WhiskyJason here, whiskey from the viewpoint of an American in Germany tasting rare and exotic whiskeys. Today I am in Japan. Now this is not really that exotic, at least I've found videos about the Nikka Whisky Rare Old Super. Now what I have never found a video about so far is this little guy called the Nikka Black 8. Aged 8 years Nikka Whisky. Now I'm going to compare the two of them. Of course, it's got a screw cap because that's what they do in Japan. Now, for me, if I've read correctly and I understand the entire thing correctly, this is the Jim Beam white label. This is the Johnny Walker red. This is the Jack Daniel's Old Number 7. This is the standard whiskey that you'd get at every single convenience store in Japan. They're called a kiosk. There, you just walk down the street and you go in there and you can buy bottles of whiskey, bourbon, as well as here Japan or Japanese whiskey. And so this is a bottom shelf Japanese whiskey. Over here, I paid less than 30 euros for this bottle, so less than $40. And the same thing also for the Rare Old Super. Now, this is actually a 8-year-old age statement. This has no age statement. And they're both imported by Le Maison de Whisky in Paris over here to Europe. And I don't know how good your Japanese is, but mine's not. It's all in Japanese except for the very, very top part of that. And here we have actually nothing. But I do have a box. And what's the box? The box is also Japanese. A friend of mine actually took his iPhone out and said, "Oh, I can do this." And he took the picture and said, "Siri, translate." And Siri said, "Oh, wait a second, I need to download Japanese." And so then she downloaded and was able to read this from Japanese into German. And it was very, very interesting. But this is just Japanese whiskey that they produced for the Japanese market. And they shipped and exported over here to Europe. Love it. Sometimes it's very, very great to be in Europe. You get stuff that you cannot find anyplace else. All right, so I'm going to compare the two of them. Both Nikka, both I don't know if they're only pure malts. I'm going to say they're both blends. I'm 100% sure that the Rare Old Super is a blend, and I was fairly sure that this is also a blend with 8 years old, and it doesn't say it anywhere. Good. Oh, by the way, there's actually a Nikka Black 8 that has 34 or 37% because whiskey in Japan does not need to be 40%. This is 40%, at least that's what the label says. I do not have a device to measure. So the nose. A tiny, tiny little bit here of smoke. If you have a good cocktail maker, they might take a little tobacco, take a little blowtorch to it, make it, ignite it, give it a flame, put the cocktail glass on top of it so that the smoke actually coats the sides of the glasses. That's what I'm getting here. Just a faint, faint, faint smoke. Here, I don't get this. I get a lot more of a sweet wood, sweet honey moment. So, Black 8, Nikka, Japanese whiskey exploded when Jim Murray declared one of the whiskeys there to be the whiskey of the year. Everyone started buying that whiskey from Japan. It's very, very interesting. If you look at the history of Japan, they started off 1923, and if I get the name right, I can do this correctly. So we had here, oh wow, we have his picture here. I'm terrible with my whiskey history at this moment. Actually, I should be able to... Oh, I threw away... Okay. Nope. Don't have any other Japanese whiskey. There was this guy, Mikazaki, whatever his name was. He went to Scotland, met a Scottish girl, came back, brought her back, and actually worked for this guy who started, first of all, Suntory. And then he went off on his own after, I think, 8 years and started Nikka. And that was the godfather of whiskey here. And so they've been around with whiskey in Japan since 1923, 1918, depends on who you ask, who started it first. Now, no one bought any whiskey from Japan. because of course they produce for the domestic market. Who wanted Japanese whiskey? Japanese whiskey is a copy of Scottish whiskey. If you can buy Scotch, why buy Japanese? Why buy a copy? Now, Japanese people tried to perfect it. They actually picked areas around Japan that were very similar from the geography, from the weather, from the temperature, and so on to make it actually very, very similar. They often imported peat because, as far as I know, Japan does not have any real peat sources there, and they tried to copy and perfect what that was at that time the main whiskey. And that's why we still have a lot of Japanese blends, because up until the 80s Scottish whiskey was almost primarily blends. Only since the 80s have we started finding out that single malt whiskey is better. Now, Jim Murray therefore then came and tried something and said, this stuff is excellent. And of course the entire world tried to pounce on that whiskey and bought it up. And of course, there wasn't enough in storage. And so the age statements, the 21, the 17, even the 12-year-old statements were, by the time I started drinking whiskey, a rarity. And now, 2018, they've disappeared completely. It's almost impossible to get anything new from a Japanese distillery with an age statement on that. I'm going to give them 3 to 5 years and they'll figure out the problem. They'll start putting age statements on there. 8-year-old, 10-year-old, 12-year-old. But until then, they actually had to go to no age statements, which is unbelievable. An entire country did not have enough supply. One little thing that's important, Japanese whiskey, and I have a bottle here actually to prove it. Do not buy Togachi. Sorry, Togachi is not Japanese whiskey. Togachi is Scotch and Canadian whiskey mixed together in Japan, and then stored down in a railroad tunnel. They did not produce it in Japan. It's a mix, I'm going to repeat myself, of Scotch and Canadian whiskey. They bottle in Japan, and legally, because it's bottled there, they can call it Japanese whiskey. I think this is a fraud. Yeah, I do not believe that is what it should be. I was so disappointed when I heard the story about that bottle. And be careful, more and more people in Japan will be doing that. Therefore, I highly recommend, if you're going to buy Japanese whiskey, stay with the brand names at the beginning. We know, go to Nikka, go to Suntory. Suntory bought Jim Beam, by the way. Remember, it's Beam Suntory. And so you're on very, very safe ground there. Good, enough time in the glass. The 8-year-old is much deeper, dark at this moment. The the rare old is very, very sweet and a little bit of burnt caramel. So, going to try it. %, 8 years old, with a tiny, tiny little bit of that smoke, a little bit of that peat in there. But in general, a very nice whiskey. This is a C+ whiskey. Maybe even a B- if I'm on a good day. Moving on to our super rare old Nikka whiskey. Much smoother, much creamier, much sweeter, much oilier, more oil. Oiliger. That was German, by the way. We can do that in German. We can take oil and make it oilier. Excellent. Very, very nice. This is a solid B, if not a B+, and that's a budget whiskey. These are both lower shelf Japanese whiskeys. All right? And if you ever find one, go here for the rare old super. It looks a little bit like a cognac bottle, doesn't it? Nice, nice, nice. Here it looks like a an old, what is it, Jim Beam bottle almost. Very, very nice. It's called the bearded Nikka as well, because the guy's got the beard. Looks like maybe the king or the jack from a deck of cards. So very, very nice stuff. Value for money, both of these are under 30 euros over here, so under $40 for Japanese whiskey. Age statement, can't find any more. No age statement, still available, at least over here in Germany. Very highly recommendable. Good. My question of the day. What is your favorite Japanese whiskey under $60, $70? I'm going to have to probably say Hibiki Harmony. I know that the 12, and I definitely know the 17 wasn't under that price range, but just the normal Harmony is a very, very nice whiskey. A little bit more grain influence than I like, but still, I love the bottle, I love the story, I love what it's all about. To be very, very honest, a blind tasting, I know that this super would actually win. Thank you very much for watching. Whiskey Jason here, whiskey from the viewpoint of an American in Germany. See you soon. Bye-bye.